Nice to see your faces, and thanks for coming out. My name is Yusuf, and I'm building a function. Just to jump right in, so we provide a platform for developers and enterprises to run AI functions on device. Each word in this little tagline means something. So run means we help them with inference workloads. This is you doing everything from background removal to search on Perplexity to just a bunch of different things that you use basically ambiently every day. We help developers run AI specifically because it's very compute intensive. And so every AI model or anything you've ever used is usually like burning through a lot of computations every second. We have the skill set to make this run and run very fast. Functions are just the unit of computation, like the purest way to define what you do. And on device, it's highlighted, that's where we're special. So right now, if you're a startup and you want to have AI in your product, you usually go call up NVIDIA or AWS and say, hey, can you rent me a bunch of expensive servers? And then you're going to spend an awful lot of money doing so. With our technology, we're trying to bring some of that computation back to your own deployments or your own consumers' devices, your users' devices. So that way they can run these models directly in their browser tab or on their phone or on their Apple Watch someday if we ever get to it. So AI is making its way into every product. As you know, you've probably used AI today, yesterday, in a bunch of different ways. But with that, the costs are soaring. There's limited GPU supply. GPU means graphics processor. So these are like the dedicated processors that do all the AI computation for you. And because of that limited supply and like insane demand, we're seeing like the price of AI serving go up. I think last year alone, NVIDIA spent companies spent $50 billion on acquiring NVIDIA GPUs, and this year it's even going up. But there's a separate trend that's happening that's a lot more subtle, which is the fact that like consumer devices, so your Apple M series MacBook or your iPhone or your Android device are all getting a lot more powerful. And that means that we can now bring some of these models to run on your consumer devices directly instead of having to rent a bunch of servers somewhere else in the cloud. And so we provide basically software development kits or effectively just like software libraries that developers can import and use in their projects to be able to run these models on device. So here's like a toy example you could just like scan very quickly. You should just like see yourself, just give it camera permissions. You should see yourself, and then you should see a clone of yourself with the background removed. This is the primitive that powers all of the background blurring and removal stuff you've ever used in Zoom or Google Meet or any of those things. And it's running real time on your phone, in your browser. You can literally like turn off your internet connection and it still works. Anyway, digging into like how we actually do this for developers, for our customers, we provide these libraries, and in as little as 2 lines of code, a developer can basically run some of this AI model. So here in this example, suppose you're a person building a website or a web backend, you'd be working in JavaScript, we provide like an SDK for you. If you're in Python, if you're building a microservice, we have a Python library that you can use. If you're building an app or a game, we have a C# library. The key is that across all of these different languages and environments, the code is the exact same. So who are we selling to? We sell to startups and enterprises who have a lot of spend in AI. So these are companies that are usually paying OpenAI or Anthropic or AWS or any of these providers a lot of money every month to power everything from search to image generation to content captioning and transcriptions if you've ever used like Firefly's AI and a bunch of other things. The key value that we provide to these companies is that they go from paying per user that they have, per model that they use, and per prediction that you as a user makes, to them paying only per user per model. So we're crossing out an entire multiplier from their cost structure. And then our product is self-serve, so developers can basically go on our website, sign up, use it without ever coming to us or like knowing what we look like. And just like really dig that point in. So this is a graph comparing an embedding model from OpenAI to using an open source model that's similar in performance running on our platform. For context, an embedding model basically just takes in text like a paragraph and gives you a list of numbers, a vector that understands what was in your original text. And so this powers a lot of the search you've ever used on places like Perplexity. And as you can see, basically because we're crossing out the multiplier, the cost scaling is insane, especially as you like increase the number of users on your platform. If you go to our website, we have more comparisons that show like even more drastic differences. Zooming out, function only became possible middle of last year, primarily because like OpenAI opened up their GPT-4 API for us developers to use. But there have been these trends that have been coming up leading up to this point that have been making it more and more possible that not a lot of people really realize. The first is the fact that a lot of companies, OEMs, who are building consumer hardware, so companies like Apple, Qualcomm, and the like, have been making their hardware a lot more powerful because they want to have features like Apple Intelligence, which should be launching in a few months, and a few other things. But on the other hand, tooling in this space, if you're a developer and you want to build something that runs locally, has been dismal up till this point, and that's where we think we can provide the most value to the developer market by, like I showed you earlier, just giving them a software library, an SDK that they can use in as little as 2 lines of code. So this is like the quintessential traction slide. Just gonna break the fourth wall here. I think the major thing that is worth showing on this slide is actually not the traction. This has pretty much been over the course of the BKSCAL program. It's the fact that basically once developers are on our platform, they will never leave. We provide such critical and fundamental infrastructure, compute infrastructure, that the moment they decide that they don't like my face anymore and they want to try something else or just like stop using us, they are now exposed to all of the complexity that we've been able to bottle up in just 2 lines of code. And a lot of the companies that are with us, the startups that use us right now, simply do not have the data, the infrastructure, the capital, or knowledge to build this themselves. And so we just have a very by default, basically a product that grows with our users. So as far as the competitive landscape, there's a few other startups in this space, but almost all of them are either stuck in the cloud paradigm, so they're helping you run stuff server side, or they are stuck to the Apple ecosystem because Apple is the only company out there that has enough tooling to make this possible, but not smooth enough. And so as far as cloud startups, there's a lot of competition. There's been a lot of investments in startups like Modal, which is based here in New York, Replicate, Base 10. In aggregate, I believe these companies have raised probably ballpark about $250 million. But again, they face a lot of competition from one another, but also downward pressure from hyperscalers like AWS and Google and Azure, because basically all these companies also want to offer the same product, and they have a lot more distribution than a lot of startups. And then on device, which is what we do, is practically greenfield, because right now it's so early and the tech is only just becoming online that the few projects that are out there are usually open source. They're very specific to one purpose, and they're basically not building for the future that we envision to come. And so in some sense, we believe we're further along than just about anyone else, companies like Ollama, LM Studio, or argmax. It's just me. Basically, the who here is aspirational. But yeah, so basically I've been building and selling cross-platform APIs since I was 16 years old. I've built and sold software that runs locally on device across different platforms to companies like Google, Microsoft, Warner Brothers, Walt Disney, and thousands of others that I'm forgetting to list. And so these are companies that if they knew who I was, if they knew how young I was, and if they knew what the code looked like, they would be absolutely not. But they did it anyway, and it worked out pretty well for them. So I've gotten a lot of experience knowing just how to build software that runs on every device that you have, but also software that runs everywhere and runs very fast, which is what you need to build AI experiences for the future. So yeah, with that, I think that's it. So yeah, we're just launched next up. So.
All right, questions?
Hey, Yusuf, how are you? I think we met actually sometime recently. Yeah. But my question for you is, there is a lot of competition in this space, even though it isn't specific to what you're doing right now, and a lot of companies that have raised a lot of money here. You're distilling this down to a couple of lines of code. What's the moat that you're building for this?
So the moat is that so just to I guess add some color to what you said, the competition that exists almost entirely exists server side. So the on-device startups that have raised capital have raised probably in aggregate less than $20 million compared to the cloud startups, which have raised literally 10x that. And again, the folks who are doing this stuff on device, they don't have the infrastructure, technical expertise right now to be able to deploy everywhere. So literally our tech can run with the same code on Android, iOS, macOS, Windows, the browser, which is what you just demoed, and Linux, which covers every device you'll ever use ever, period, basically. No other startup does this, not a single one. And so even though on the front end it looks pretty simple, it's just 2 lines of code, like that can't be that complicated. On the back end, and Chris and Timmy can attest to this, it is hell, basically. It is an insane amount of engineering that just like not a lot of people have reason to even have that skill set. I happen to be a very lucky person because I just like randomly had to build in this space since I was pretty young. But most companies don't have a need to even have the skill set to begin with, talk us of like building this type of infrastructure. I hope that answers your question.
My name is Kayvon Noel. First of all, that was an awesome presentation. I feel like you gotta protect you at all costs because you're brilliant. My question to you is, how are you sort of tiering your pricing, right? So, I know you said enterprise and startups, and startups, there's sort of a wide range, and I'm sure a ton of startups, even those that are coming up from the bottom, would love to use your product. Do you have sort of a floor and ceiling for kind of the size and the sort of budget for startups and enterprise?
So we effectively just like, this is not going back quickly enough. We effectively just like ask folks how much they're spending on their cloud compute. And like this bar, for example, starts like 1,000 users. Basically, to get benefit from our platform, you need to be spending at least a few $1,000s per month on one of these like cloud providers. That's where you can see the value immediately, basically. And so for us, we effectively just like offer like enterprise discount plans or EDPs. All the other like providers do the same thing. We say, okay, you're expected to spend, I don't know, $1 million for this year for serving your product. We will, give you a discount for half of that, but you have to pay that up front, and then everything beyond that, every like marginal usage that you generate, we would then charge you at some other rate. But yeah, for the most part, we're focused on companies that already have a lot of volume because they can see the value immediately. Small developers, like indie developers, can also use our product and build interesting things, but it's just like not beneficial for us to spend our time chasing them versus the larger companies. So, yes, go ahead.
I'm not sure I'm fully understanding how this actually works. So are you saying that a company that is currently spending a bunch of money on cloud computing can use the devices of their own employees to run these sort of calculations and cloud computing exercises that would otherwise be done on the cloud?
That's correct.
Okay, but then I don't understand in this slide why you would list 1 million users, because there are only like 3 or 4 companies in the world that have 1 million employees and therefore would have 1 million devices.
Well, no, because if you have a website, if you're Amazon and you have, 20 million people searching for handbags and Afar bars, that's 20 million people that you're doing, semantic search for, basically. And so with our tech, you can have all of those 20 million just do the search in their browser tab versus sending it to your server cluster to do the computation. And so we are consumer-facing, not just internal to the organization, if that makes sense.
So a company that is consumer-facing could essentially like mobilize the devices of its customers to start running these calculations?
Yes, and they already do. So every time you use like Zoom background replacement, that is running on your laptop. Every time you use almost everything in Photoshop, that's also running in your laptop except generative fill. And at some point, they're going to move that to run on your laptop. So it's already there. It's just like not as noticeable. We're giving developers the ability to like move an awful lot more stuff to run locally. But yes.
And how much capital are you raising now?
Talk to me after.
I will.
Go ahead, come on. Oh, sorry, microphone.
Yeah, I'm curious about your go-to-market motion. You mentioned that you really want to sell to enterprise customers because it's just larger opportunity. But today, and you had a slide showing your growth over the summer.
Yes.
How have you been getting the word out? Has it been really finding the champions within organizations and really working with developers directly to talk to them and have them talk to their managers? I'd love to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, so basically I haven't done like go-to-market yet effectively. The developers that we have on the platform are developers that I've basically had in my own network from building a bunch of tooling before. A lot of the activity that's actually driving this is one of our startup partners who is like, they just launched a product, their tech star's back, they just got invited by Alibaba for some like conferences, so they're like showing this an awful lot. As far as go-to-market though, basically, the plan is to build like an inbound funnel. So there's just like a lot of activity and interest in like running AI locally now. So like you can literally build anything and like you're just gonna get a bunch of activity no matter what. So we want to use that to get some mind share, but then figure out who are the point people to reach at some of these like larger enterprises. I have a few in my network that I'm also working on. But up till now, literally, it has been entirely just like engineering, and only just like now starting to like go out and talk to more people. Because again, like building the tech itself and making sure it doesn't break is pretty complicated. So I hope that answers your question. Cool, thank you. I see a question in the back. Hi. Oh, okay.
Full disclosure, I understood like 46% of what you just
worries,
said.
no worries.
So this might be a dumb question, but I'm curious, since it sounds like there's some reliancy or dependency on hardware.
Yes.
How are you thinking about the compatibility of what currently exists and
Sure.
like future forecasting ahead?
Well, that's why developers pay us money, because basically it's our job to make sure that whatever they want to run can run fast enough on the millions of models of laptops and combinations and all that stuff out there. We basically fan out. So you give us like code in one language, Python, and then we then figure out all the different ways that we could like hyper target one specific model or family of models to make sure it runs as quickly as possible. And again, so I think there was an earlier question about like what's our moat. That is part of our moat, basically. Like for a lot of companies, that just doesn't make any sense to do. It's so much of a hassle. And so we've built infrastructure that makes us do this automatically at scale. So it could just like run in our sleep, basically. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that covers it. Oh, there's
We have one more question here.
last one.
Hi, can you talk about the overall opportunity of AI and the general cost savings more intimately?
Sure. So general opportunity or impact of AI, I try not to like wax philosophical, but I think just like in general, it's like automation is what I would think of it in terms of. Sorry, tongue twister. So yeah, so basically there's just like an awful lot of opportunities for like automating a lot of things that right now are manual. As far as like cost savings, basically I think there's somewhat of like a bubble where, you know, there's all this spend on like these cloud providers and NVIDIA, but there's so much ambient compute around us. Like the amount of compute in like Central Park, if you could aggregate it, you could probably make a supercomputer out of that, basically. And so I think there's quite an opportunity for people to like realize that, wait, we don't even need new tech. We could just use the tech we already have and just like use it more efficiently. And so there's kind of like, that's kind of like the philosophy that undergirds like what we're building. And there's a few other companies out there building with the same philosophy. So I hope that answers. But yeah. Thank you. You've been a captive audience. So, yeah.